This video will cover the override mode of OutsideView Enterprise. It is an add-on module that supplements the video on supervisor mode itself. The audience for this video are enterprise supervisors who will learn how to invoke supervisor override mode and then define user privileges, dynamic profile membership, do housekeeping, and the like. We'll start with how to invoke supervisor override mode. Then we'll talk about administering users, assigning them to profiles, and doing enterprise level distributed housekeeping. We'll talk about configuring user privileges, and finally I'll have a talk with you about file locations both at the hub of the enterprise and at the end user individual storage location. Ready? Let's go. As you might guess, supervisor override mode is a special mode within supervisor mode. So let's first start supervisor mode, as we discussed in the previous module, by clicking on supervisormode.exe within an individual enterprise profile, in this case a profile named standard. When supervisor mode comes up, we will go to a switch, edit, application settings, and under settings we will say enable override mode. This is a password protected switch for which the default password is Crystal. You'll see that the label of OutsideView has changed from merely supervisor to now being supervisor override mode. We'll go back in to application settings where additional tabs have been unhidden. For instance, let's look here at client administration. You'll notice that here you can change that default override password of Crystal to one that only you know. We also have the ability to add users to the specific profile we're working with, which is standard. By explicitly listing users or groups within a given profile, then clients of the enterprise, when they start, can look up their logged in user and dynamically assign themselves to the appropriate profile. To add, I'll click on add, and I can pick different domains as they exist, or I can specify individuals, check name. When the name is confirmed, it is added. We can also add group names, and when confirmed, that person is added. Another option in client administration is labeled options, and these are some timing or some verbose switches. If we go here, how long shall an enterprise client wait before giving up on finding the enterprise center point, the shared folder, or the hub? The timeout is 30 seconds. And we can set enterprise to be in a verbose mode to give us guidance as we go through. Finally, under client administration, what else we can do is from this centralized switch delete all pre-existing OutsideView configuration files on those end users who will be starting up as a member of this enterprise profile. We'll get back to this concept of user preference files in a moment when we talk about user privileges, but we can choose, if we're deleting and refreshing the end user's local storage of settings, whether to include local preference files as well. In this case, I will say OK. Let's talk now about user privileges. This is pretty much the heart of override mode. We can set user limits. For instance, we could say that an end user can only run one copy of OutsideView itself. If we set that limit, then we enable additional limits as well. We can limit the total number of open sessions, and this is of any kind. We can even go further if we choose and limit the number of open sessions of a specific type. For TTY, which is used in standard file transfer, we could say none, and now they must use encrypted file transfer such as SFTP. We can say how many sessions of what types end users can run. We can go further. By default, an end user within an OutsideView profile has permission to create additional workspaces and additional sessions, or to create and edit macros. These would be stored locally to that end user workstation, and they would supplement whatever files might have been created by you in supervisor mode. If a user has permission to create session files and workspaces, they really have all permissions as far as OutsideView is concerned. You can change that. You could say they cannot create workspaces. You could have them not be able to create sessions or create or edit macros. But perhaps, and we'll show that here, you want them to be able to manipulate their workspace settings in terms of preferences and session settings. If we leave these on, what settings do we let them modify? This button lets us see. So right now, end users can modify all of these settings. These settings are the categories that you see from OutsideView if you go session settings. I'm going to say that the end users can modify colors, the keyboard map, capture, and toolbars. They cannot manipulate identity management or dynamic input, auto connect or auto login settings. And this is a pretty important switch that you probably want to check on. If I choose at the supervisor mode to create new ID types or subgroups, I want that list to be distributed to the end users, overriding their default ID file list. So this is an example. It obviously could be whatever suits your organization best. Let's talk a little bit about the remaining settings here. We can specify a default workspace that end users, each time they start up OutsideView, it will start that one. And I'm going to leave it set to workspace 1, which exists within my standard profile. I could turn off the ability to do screen prints. I could turn off the ability of users to browse for additional sessions or workspaces other than in their individual storage location. I could lock down virtually all settings. This is lockdown mode. The only thing that users are able to do at that time is, you can explore this for yourself, but they can start OutsideView, open a specific workspace, rearrange its windows, access help, and exit. And that's it. They can do what's on the toolbar icons, but of course the toolbar icons can be defined by you and contain only the contents you want. So what we've set is that users can modify some session settings, but essentially only colors, keyboard map, capture, and toolbar. Okay, if I want to exit override mode, I'll just go back to settings, uncheck enabling override mode, and out of that mode and back into just standard supervisor mode, which you're familiar with from the previous video. Here in supervisor mode, I'm going to open and show you that workspace 1, which will be automatically invoked by end users. Point out just while we're here that under all sessions, we are seeing all 4. If I wanted to, I could look at only sessions with the ID type of nonstop user, or only the sessions with the ID type of super, or only the sessions whose subgroup is development, or only the session whose subgroup is production. So I get a chance to focus in my session bar on which sessions interest me at the time. Let's exit supervisor mode at this point and have a look at some of the files that have been modified. When we manipulated the user profile membership, we created in the center profile a file named profile_users. This can be edited directly, however it has some case sensitivity and so on, and so generally using supervisor override mode is the proper way to interact with it. In profile_users, you'll notice that here's that timeout value. Those verbose switches are set to 1, which is true. The path is 1, which is SQL licensing, and we show groups and users assigned to various profiles. The way this list works is it searches top to bottom for a username. First hit wins, so CPGimH here will become a member of the profile standard. If it drops all the way through the search for a specific user, it will start again at the top, search top to bottom for a group membership, such as I am a member of testing. And if it doesn't find a hit any way through, it will default to a profile membership that it used last, which typically would be the shortcut used to install OutsideView from a particular profile. Let's get out of this and start the OutsideView client. Notice in verbose mode that it's giving us additional messages. We were explicitly listed as a member of the profile standard. Now let's have a look at what those user permissions that we set in supervisor override mode have done for us. If you'll recall, I had permission to change session settings. Let's go look at what I have. I have permission to manipulate the colors, the keyboard map, the macros, and the macro toolbar. And that's all. The rest don't even appear. Let's change this color setting as an illustration. A black background. Say OK. Save my SSL session. It's saving the new settings. Oh, there's new colors. Local black color. So you can see where these files are saved. So now let's look at what has happened. I'm going to go to View, Configuration Data Folder. Under Param, we took down the workspace CPW file from the hub, from the Enterprise SharePoint, and we took down Telnet, SSL, SSH, and SFTP session files. My local changes to the SSL file are in a local user modifier file, ssl.cus, or user file. Another place that we've changed things is under Components, where I created a local color scheme. So now when OutsideView starts up on this client and it starts the SSL session file, it will defer to the CUS file, and the CUS file says go get the color file local black. That's how it works, that individual users can have individual settings even though the centrally stored file back at the share remains unchanged. That's it for supervisor override mode. It completes the suite of capabilities that allow a central point of control over a community of users. And again, you have supervisor mode and supervisor override mode for each of multiple possible profiles so that you can suit your enterprise implementation to match a variety of different user subcommunities. Thank you.